Donald Trump is unusually easy to praise badly and unusually easy to criticize badly. So this is not a personality ranking. It is a record. 10 achievements, 10 failures, and 1 rule. Trump gets credit only when his decisions materially change the result. He gets blamed too, by the same standard. And when Congress, scientists, allies, or another president did part of the work, they keep their part of the credit. The cutoff is July 12th, 2026. Anything from the second term is still developing, and I will say so when it matters. Let us start with 10 achievements. Number 10, the border numbers fell sharply in 2025. In May, Border Patrol reported 8,725 encounters between ports of entry on the southwest border. That was down 93% from May of the previous year. Trump's detention, removal, and access restrictions clearly strengthened the deterrent signal, but the curve had already turned after the Biden administration tightened asylum rules in June 2024. So this is a Trump achievement, not a Trump-only achievement. Number 9. The pre-pandemic labour market remained strong. Unemployment fell into the mid-3% range before COVID hit, while wages and employment kept growing. Trump inherited an expansion that began in 2009. He did not create it on Inauguration Day. Still, presidents are often graded on whether they preserve a good economy, and for 3 years his administration did. Number 8. NATO allies increased defence spending. Trump's public pressure was abrasive, sometimes needlessly so, but it made burden sharing harder for European governments to ignore. The important correction is that NATO adopted its 2% target in 2014, and allied spending was rising before Trump arrived. He accelerated the argument. He did not invent it. Number 7. The Great American Outdoors Act. Trump signed a bipartisan law that permanently funded the Land and Water Conservation Fund at $900 million a year. It also authorized up to $1.9 billion annually for 5 years to repair neglected public lands and facilities. For a president not usually associated with conservation, that matters. It is a substantial and durable result. Number 6. The territorial defeat of the ISIS caliphate. ISIS lost its final territorial enclave in March 2019, and US forces later killed its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The campaign began under Obama, and local forces carried most of the ground fighting, but Trump continued the coalition effort and presided over the end of ISIS control over a state-like territory. The group survived as an insurgent threat, so caliphate defeated is accurate. ISIS eliminated is not. Number 5. The courts. Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and a large block of lower court judges. Whether you like the resulting decisions is a political judgment. Whether this changed American law for a generation is not seriously in doubt. For conservative voters who made the courts a priority, Trump delivered one of his most durable promises. Number 4. Replacing NAFTA with the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. USMCA kept continental trade while changing auto rules, labor enforcement, digital trade provisions, and review procedures. Its economic effects are mixed, especially in the auto sector. But it passed Congress with broad support and survived the next administration. That makes it more than a rebranding exercise and less than the economic revolution Trump advertised. Number 3. The First Step Act. The law reduced some federal sentences, expanded recidivism programs, and created time credits toward pre-release custody for eligible prisoners. It was bipartisan, and advocates outside the White House did years of work to make it possible. Trump's support helped move it through a Republican Senate. Implementation has been uneven, but the statutory reform is real. Number 2. The Abraham Accords. The Trump administration helped normalize or improve Israel's relations with the United Arab Emirates. Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. The strongest case is the Emirates, where diplomatic, travel, investment, and trade ties became tangible and survived a regional war. The accords did not solve the Palestinian conflict, and American incentives helped close the deals. Even with those limits, opening formal relationships where none existed was a genuine diplomatic achievement. Number 1. Operation Warp Speed. The federal government combined advance purchases, manufacturing support, regulatory coordination, and overlapping development stages to compress the vaccine timeline. By December 2020, 2 vaccines had emergency authorization in the United States. Scientists and companies invented the vaccines. Congress supplied money. Decades of research made the science possible. Trump's administration built the mechanism that took an extraordinary laboratory effort to national scale at extraordinary speed. The later rollout, it had problems. The achievement remains. That is the positive ledger. Notice the pattern. Trump's best results came when the task was concrete, negotiable, and visible. Now, the other ledger, number 10, the debt arithmetic. Behind the 2017 tax law, the law increased incentives to invest and raised projected output for a time. It also reduced revenue on a scale that growth did not repay. CBO later estimated roughly $1.9 trillion in added deficits through 2028, including economic feedback. You can defend them. The tax priorities. You cannot honestly describe the package as self-financing, especially from a president who promised to reduce the national debt. Number 9. Leaving the Paris Climate Agreement. Trump was right that climate commitments have distributional costs and that other. Countries often demand more from the United States than from themselves. But withdrawal gave up American leverage inside the agreement without, producing a stronger alternative. It also turned long-term climate planning into another policy that changed whenever. The White House changed parties. That is bad statecraft, even before the environmental argument begins. Number 8. The first-term trade war. Tariffs can be useful in a narrow negotiation. Trump used them as a general theory of economic power. CBO projected that the barriers imposed from 2018 onward would leave real output and average household income lower than under the previous rules. Some industries gained protection. Importing firms, farmers, and consumers absorbed costs. The government paid farmers to offset retaliation. The policy created leverage, but the promised manufacturing transformation never clearly matched the bill. Number 7. Family. Separation under zero tolerance. The administration chose to prosecute improper entry cases in a way that systematically separated many parents from their children. GAO found that the responsible agencies had not planned together for the surge and lacked consistent tracking systems. The government identified at least 2,654 children in custody who potentially fell under the court's reunification order. Border enforcement is legitimate. It is a government function. Building a policy before building a way to reconnect families was an avoidable administrative and human failure. Number 6. The broader COVID response. Operation Warp Speed belongs in the achievement column. The national testing, communication, and interagency response does not. GAA repeatedly documented missing plans, unclear data, and coordination problems, eventually issuing dozens of recommendations. No president could have made the pandemic painless, and governors controlled many health rules. But presidential communication mattered, and Trump often made a difficult collective action problem harder by treating basic public health guidance as a loyalty contest. Number 5. Withholding security assistance from Ukraine. The administration held back roughly $214 million that Congress had appropriated while Trump pressed Ukraine's president for politically useful investigations. The Government Accountability Office concluded that the withholding violated the Impoundment Control Act. You can believe the first impeachment became theatrical and still recognize the underlying problem. Public power was used in a way that blurred national policy and personal political benefit. Number 4, leaving the Iran nuclear deal. The original agreement was narrow, temporary in important places, and silent about much of Iran's regional behavior. Those were legitimate objections, but Trump withdrew before securing a stronger replacement, restored maximum pressure sanctions, and got no new deal. Iran then began exceeding the agreement's nuclear limits. A policy can be tough in presentation and still leave the underlying problem worse. Number 3, the Doha agreement with the Taliban. The February 2020 deal set a withdrawal path while excluding the Afghan government from the negotiation. Isaiah later concluded that the agreement damaged the government's credibility and the security forces' morale. Biden chose to complete the withdrawal, and the Afghan state had been weakened by failures spanning 20 years and 4 presidencies, so the collapse is not Trump's alone, but a deal that sidelined the partner the United States expected to survive helped make that survival less likely. Number 2, the second-term fiscal and tariff gamble. The 2025 reconciliation law cut taxes for most households and increased some incentives to work and invest. It also reduced health and nutrition programs, and in CBO's later baseline, added about $4.7 trillion to projected deficits over 10 years, including interest and economic effects. At the same time, the administration's higher tariffs raised customs revenue, but were projected to lift inflation temporarily and reduce investment, output, and employment. A Supreme Court ruling in February 2026 then removed much of the tariff authority used for the first wave. This record, it is still moving. For now, it looks less like a coherent economic doctrine than 2 expensive bets pulling in different directions. Number 1, the attempt to overturn the 2020 election. The House January 6th committee documented pressure on state officials, the Justice Department, the Vice President, and Congress after courts and election. Administrators rejected claims that could have changed the result. Reasonable people can dispute parts of the committee's interpretation. The central conduct is not a matter of style. A sitting president tried to remain in office after losing the certified election. That ranks first, because elections are the mechanism that allows every other policy mistake on this list to be corrected without violence. If a president refuses that mechanism, the rest of the scorecard becomes secondary. So what does it say? The full record. Trump is unusually effective at setting an agenda, pressuring institutions, making discreet bargains, and locking in appointments. He is much less reliable when success requires administrative coordination, fiscal consistency, or accepting an institutional limit. The same willingness to push past convention explains both columns. Sometimes it broke inertia, sometimes it broke the guardrail. That is not a 50-50 verdict. It is a description of where his presidency has been genuinely effective and where its costs have been genuinely dangerous.